His name is Jose Perez, and he has a great story that touched my life when I was about your age, and I hope it'll do the same for yours. Just a quick back history. He was a former leader of a gang. He was one of the top drug dealers in Philadelphia, and he suffered a lot of loss in his life. And he is the author of the book, I Live to Tell About It, and he is here today to tell you about it. And he brought copies of the book that were sponsored for you, especially from Pastor Joe Maloney from a local church, Bread of Life Assemblies of God in Upper Darby. So he brought these for you. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know you'll be on your best behavior. And without further ado, Pastor Joey Perez.
Good afternoon. I'm excited to be here. You know, I look at Joey and I wonder, what was your dream? What is your dream? You know, today I want to talk about this book. It's called I Live to Tell About It. There's a young man in the front of this book. You see him in a casket. Let me tell you a little bit about him. This young man was murdered in Philadelphia after finishing high school. 4 months after he finished and graduated. I remember the day that he graduated. We went all the way to Temple University where they had the graduation. And we were happy for him. We were so happy because he made it. And many of the other guys we knew didn't make it. And 4 months later, they murdered him right in front of me. I still got scars on my head to remember the day they killed Tim, because they killed Tim trying to save my life. Now, I've been speaking a lot of schools all over the United States. I've been as far as England, the streets of England, speaking to students there. And I travel all over the world talking a lot about this book. I go into juvenile homes. I go into the penitentiaries. I go to where the worst of the worst. And it seems like everybody has had a dream in life. And somewhere down the line, the dream was shattered. 95% of the young men that I talk about in this book are dead today. 95%. Not too many of them ever made it to the age of 20, which means they died when they were teenagers. And it's sad to say, because I'm standing in your presence and I should not even be here today. I shouldn't even be here talking to you. This book should have never came into existence, because I've been in front of death over 300 times. Some of you here probably never in your life have ever been through or even done, or maybe you dream about it, or you imagine what is on the other side of the boat. It's funny because I have a 7-year-old daughter. My little 7-year-old daughter was telling me yesterday, she said, "Daddy," she said, I'm always imagining things. And I said, "Well, what are you imagining?" And she said, "Well, I imagine good things and that I can fly." I said, "Well, you know what? Why don't you imagine something that got to do with you can't fly, because you'll never be able to fly, because we were never made to fly anyway. And but you do fly, because we fly a lot in airplanes." She said, "No, but I imagine, how many of you that are here today, right now, you have a dream, but something has got in your way and is causing this dream not to come a reality?" When I was a little boy in elementary school, the teacher said to me, they took 9 students in the school, and they brought us up to the front. And they asked every kid, they said, "Listen, when you grow up, what you want to be?" So they asked a couple of the girls and a couple of the boys. I was about the 7th one. They asked the question. They said, "When you grow up, what do you want to be?" DA, make sure my father never get out of prison. And I was only in elementary school. I was only in the 5th grade, 10 years old. And this is the mentality I had at the age of 10. And the teacher looked at me and said, why do you feel this way about your father? I said, because I don't like him. I hate him. Now, let me say this to you. This young man that I talk about, he wasn't no stranger in my life. This young man was my brother, 1 year older than I. When they killed Tim, I died the same day. And I made a promise, if I had to kill people and shoot people, somebody would pay for his death. Now, a lot of things that I would say with my mouth, I carried it out. Because, see, I started living in the streets when I was only 10 years old. I lived in the streets. I ran away from home. My mother used to be home crying, wondering about her 10-year-old son. I come from a large family. There were 5 boys, 5 girls, and there were always 2 extra kids living in my house because it seemed like every time some stray kids left their home, my mother took them in. And here, when I was 10 years old, I was a very strong-willed child. But yeah, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be maybe a builder, a construction worker, building houses, because my father used to build houses. And I always had a desire to be able to create things. And here I'm 10 years old, and the teacher is asking me these questions, and now she's saying, why do you hate your father so much? And I started telling my teacher that my brother Mikey, when he was 9 years old and I was 8, Mikey stole $20 from my father. So my father took Mikey's 2 hands and he stuck them on the stove while we didn't have electricity. We didn't have no gas in the house. We didn't have money. We should get on the surplus line and wait to get the food for the government. But so we didn't have no gas at the time to heat the house. So my father had bought a little stove, electric stove, and so that we could cook food. And what my father did, he took my brother's hands and he put it on the stove, and he burned my brother's 2 hands. Now imagine, nowadays, if you do that, you end up in jail. Your parents. My brother had 2 blisters on each hand full of pus, and he busted them and all the water came out, and his hand started to stink. Now you imagine, he's only 9 years old, and my father wanted to show him that stealing was bad, and that's how he did it. My brother Mikey told my father, when I grow up, I'm going to kill you. When he was 9 years old. He told my father, when I grow up, I'm going to kill you. And my father looked at Mikey and he said, yeah, if I don't kill you first. My father, is the type of man that would have done it. Because when I was 8 years old, I was sleeping one day and I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard a lot of screaming outside of my house. And when I came running out to the window, all my brothers and sisters were sleeping. My father had a man by the neck and he was stabbing the man in the side, because we thought that the man had tried to break in our house because he had knocked the front door down. And it wasn't. My father had a problem with the man in the bar, and the man came to get revenge on my father, knocked the door down. Him and my father got into a scuffle where my father stabbed the man 7 times. I was only 8 years old when I ran. When I woke up all my brothers and sisters and saw my mother's nightgown full of blood, I told my mother, I yelled out to my father from the step, Pop, kill him, Pop, kill that man. Because we thought he was trying to break in. This is in the book. So, my father was a very violent man. We used to see cops knocking our doors down. He was always being arrested. He was never around, was always running around with a lot of women, leaving my mother with all her kids and caring for them. Never had time for us. So, we went like everybody else in school. Like some kids back then, we used to get the little Converse sneakers. Back then, it was like $7.50. And for us, we couldn't afford it, so we had to steal the Converse sneakers. Going to these big stores and steal. And what happened was that Mikey, because he wanted to get something that he could not have, that he craved for. As a little boy, 9 years old, my father burnt his hand. So he made a promise. He told my father, I'm going to kill you when I grow up. And guess what? Every time my father would chastise us or correct us or whip us, my brother Mikey always would say to him with anger in his heart, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. You just was 10 years old, I was arrested. I went into juvenile home. I got out of my parents' custody for burglary that I committed. By the time I was 12 years old, I had 3 major charges. At the age of 12, I went into a police officer's house, broke in while the police was working. I stole his 2 pistols. I didn't know that the police officer's father was an old man, was in the other room, so I went in the other room, almost killed his father because he saw my face. I stole the police guns and got away. 30 days later, they were looking for me. When they found me, I got back in the juvenile home. My father came and got me about 30 days later, almost 2 months. He left me in the juvenile home. He told the judge, he said, keep him in there until he's 21. So when the judge made my father come and get me, and he took me home, he locked me up in a room for 30 days and he left me there. And what he did was, when he let me go, all of a sudden I got in trouble again. I went and stuck up a supermarket with 3 other teenagers. I was only 12. The other 2 guys, one was 14, 2 of them were 16. I was the youngest. And I was in all the news. I'm 12 years old. I'm on Channel 3, Channel 6, Channel 10 News. And you're reading about this little young man, Jose Perez, known as alias Richie Rich, because I was the youngest, caught with $1,800 in my pocket. My father left me there for a month or so, came and got me. This time my father took me home. And he cursed me all the way from the juvenile home youth study center. And when we got home, he went and took me to the basement of my house. And when he took me to the basement, he took a chain and he wrapped it around my neck and he closed the chain with a big padlock. He took the 10-foot chain and he wrapped it around a pole and he put a padlock on it. And he said, you want to be an animal? I'm going to treat you just like an animal. And for 3 days, I was in that basement sleeping on top of a pool table. He put a bucket of water, that was my bathroom. They brought my food down to me. Now imagine 12 years old, chained up by your neck, and you're sleeping in your basement. You're not going to school because your father don't care if you're going out. So what my father did was, when he chained me up, he left me down there. And every day in that basement, I used to say, I'm going to kill my father. The same spirit that Mikey had seemed to rub off on me. And I said, I'm going to kill my father when I grow up. And every day, for 3 days, I kept saying these things. After 3 days, I took a butter knife. And for 8 hours, with the little rigid part of the butter knife, I cut the chain down away. Then I got arrested again. In that basement, I was so angry and miserable that I wanted to take it out of society.